the most severe sanctions ever imposed, but do they go far enough, and are they having any impact at all? Well, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer joins us now. I mean, you have also called for stiff sanctions all the way through and said hitting the finances would be the way to tackle Putin. It doesn't seem to be stopping the events unfolding in Ukraine. How are they strong enough, do you think, these sanctions? We've stopped short, haven't we, of signing up to the removal of SWIFT, this international financial service that allows nations to move money around. What further should be done? Well, the situation is obviously extremely serious. Your breaking news, your bulletin just now about the proximity of Russian troops to Kyiv is extremely worrying, and you can hear the voices coming out of Ukraine. And we must stand with Ukraine on this. This is Russia invading a European country. So we must stand with Ukraine. We must stand together with our allies, particularly NATO. And it's very important that we stand together as one united kingdom. And therefore, yesterday was significant in Parliament because all political parties spoke with one voice in our support for Ukraine and our support for NATO. In relation to these sanctions, I thought what the government put forward earlier this week was not strong enough. They came forward yesterday with a stronger package, and I was able to say that we, the opposition, will support those further sanctions. I do want to go further. I think that we do need further financial restrictions, particularly the SWIFT mechanism. I also think that we've got to break open the shell companies that we have here in the UK that are providing financial support for Putin. So I support what the government put forward yesterday. I want them to go further than that. The Prime Minister said yesterday there will be legislation on Monday in Parliament in relation to further measures. And I indicated, and I indicate again, that we will support those measures. Putin wants to see division amongst our allies, amongst NATO members and amongst political parties back here in the United Kingdom, and we are not going to be divided. Laudable, but of course, when you say you stand with Ukraine, our viewers this morning and we with our own eyes can see those terrible weapons and explosions occurring across the country. And it doesn't feel like we're really standing with them, whatever the limitations, or indeed that Putin is hearing this stance in order to protect us longer term. Well, I do agree that we need to change the way that we deal with Putin. In the past, he has calculated that the benefits of aggression outweigh the costs, and that's why the combined package in response to this, sanctions, financial measures, etc., must not only isolate Russia, but must be capable of crippling its ability to function. And that's why I want to push the government further on what we're doing here in the UK. And I want to see an even stronger international response, because in the past, the response hasn't been strong enough. This time, it needs to be absolutely clear. We are talking about Russia invading a European country here. It's as serious as it gets, and we must have that absolutely full response.
You talk of international response. I'm sure you've seen the footage of the Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan meeting with Vladimir Putin yesterday. By all accounts, it was a very jovial meeting. He's negotiating energy to his country, of course, which is vitally important to him. But I think one of the comments he said was, what an exciting time to be here. When you see international leaders meeting him and business going on as usual for Vladimir Putin, it seems very hard to try and sort of remonstrate that against what we're trying to help with at an international scale in terms of sanctions over the situation.
No, I agree with that. And obviously there have been attempts in recent days and weeks to have discussions with Russia, with our own ministers flying out to have those discussions in an attempt to stop the invasion. I'm afraid the line has now been crossed and the time for talks is over. Russia is invading a European country, invading Ukraine as we speak, closing in on Kyiv, and we have to take a stand here.
There's just a breaking news that's come from the Ukrainian Interior Minister, says that Russia has hit 33 civilian sites in the last 24 hours. When we came on air, there was 137 deaths in Ukraine. They're now reporting that 2 children have died as well. I mean, if ever there was a signal, Sir Keir Starmer, that actually, things need to be done and it needs to escalate, it's those statistics that are coming in. For the people of Ukraine, sanctions and financial sanctions might sound great, but they aren't visible indications of us standing with them. Do you ever envisage an opportunity or a situation whereby our military, NATO military, will actually go into Ukraine and help support their battle that they're having with the Russians?
Well, the collective decision of NATO is against that, and it's very important that we act in a united way with NATO. That will be a significant step. And I think it's very important that we act together with our NATO allies, and they're against that action. And that is why the package of the other things that we do, the support, the equipment, the logistics into Ukraine, answering their plea for financial assistance, putting in those sanctions, improving and taking those sanctions even further, both in the United Kingdom and across the world, is so important. And, of course, reinforcing our support for the surrounding countries and states around Ukraine, who are themselves deeply anxious about the situation for very obvious reasons.
Of course, it's very difficult, though, isn't it? And I'm sure I can see your solid stance, but I'm sure it pains you because for that person holding that dead child in their arm in Ukraine this morning, it means nothing, does it, hobbling the economy long term? What about our economy here, Sir Keir? What could Labour do right now? Because this is going to hit people across the UK, isn't it? There's no avoiding that. Well,
just in relation to the Ukraine issue first, I spoke to the Ukrainian ambassador yesterday, and he is asking for the full sanctions to go in. He wants that to happen and does think it'll make a material difference. So he is making asks of us, and we must respond to those asks. Obviously, there will be an impact, an economic cost here to the action that is being taken. Some of that will be in relation to what we call cost of living, the bills that people will see on a month-on-month basis. Frankly, I do think the government should have already acted. We put a very firm proposal on the table weeks ago now in relation to a windfall tax on oil and gas companies in the North Sea to bring the cost of energy bills down by up to £600. I don't think the government's really tackled this at all well, and therefore, yes, there will be implications because of what's going on in Ukraine. But that doesn't really mask the fact that when it comes to energy bills, the government has failed very badly.
No, and they're going to get worse. That is the concern for so many people, isn't it? Well, Sir Keir, thanks very much indeed.